What?
You look a little happier. Anyway, this is a spur-of-the-moment thing that Andrew and I have cooked up. My name's Steve Guttenberg. This is Andrew Jones from Elac.
Hi, guys.
And I was asking Andrew, I'm picking his brain about the future of speaker design. What will speakers be like in 2050? And we talked about a few things, but I'm not a speaker designer, and he is. So take it away, Andrew.
Well, we could kind of rephrase that.
Okay.
You say speakers in particular as though that's something separate from what we're trying to do, which is listen to music in a more either involving way or a better representation of it, what it would have been if we were there.
Right.
You know, we've got this issue of, is there a closest approach to the original sound? And technology we're using right now, there sort of isn't. We've discussed that a few times already. Right. But suppose we wanted to do that.
Mm-hmm. So it's not a new improved driver that's going to make this possible.
You know, if you look, I've been doing speakers for 40 odd years now, and the drive mechanisms, a voice coil in a magnetic field, driving a cone, that's still nearly every speaker on the market is done that way.
Or electrostatics or magnetic.
That's why I said nearly.
Yeah.
Because it's a low-cost way of doing it. We have better and better materials we use these days that were kind of unobtainium in the old days, but now even beryllium is coming down in price and being more popular. We've got some of the technologies. We've got the planar type speakers, whether it's a diaphragm with conductors on, a la Magnapan, or pure ribbon versions of something like that, or electrostatic. Yeah, as we were talking about earlier, there's the old, this speaker will kill you idea of the ionic cloud, type thing, the ionic cloud as a full range. There's ideas about using lasers. If you look at the ionic tweeters, you're creating a plasma and you're modulating the plasma. Well, plasma is just hot gas. You can make a plasma using laser excitation. And so you can modulate the laser beam to create sound. Now, can you do that on a large enough scale to produce bass? That's always the issue. Right. So there are different transducer technologies that you can maybe use to advance speakers. They're still on the fringe of getting that as a really available, affordable solution. But then you're still limited to, well, are you going to replace your mechanical speaker with this direct air excitation type speaker and still have a 2-channel system to get closer to reality? It's going to give, let's say, lower resonances or whatever quality of a speaker is improved by eliminating some of the mechanical parts. But it's not changing how you're presenting the music and how you're capturing the music in the first place. Music exists in a space, and you listen to it in that space with ears that have spatial acuity and brain processing that takes all the sounds from around you.
If you were there at the original
If you were there at the original event. And yes, getting back to if there is an original event, but maybe you can simulate an original event.
Let's go with that there actually was an original event.
Let's go with there was an original event. So there is almost a form of acoustic holography. Suppose you had a spatial array of microphones to capture the sound spreading out. Like the inverse of what Peter Walker did with the quad electrostatic speaker, the ring technique. A point source expands out, passes through an area of space. Now, if you can capture the point density of the sound over that area and then put it to a diaphragm that you controlled every part of that to create, so that's an acoustic holography. Yeah, if you look at a holographic plate, it's not an image until it's been reconstructed by a laser at that focal distance and now presents to you as though a wave is still coming at you. You froze it, now you're letting it come at you. You could maybe do that with some kind of microphone array. The closest at the moment is something like the ambisonics microphone array that can create, it can simulate any kind of microphone from omni to hypercardioids.
That's like, what mic is that called? That's the
the old Calrec sound field
and that's
microphone.
basically 4 capsules.
4 semi-cardioid capsules on a tetrahedral
And then you can
array.
mix them in
Then you can mix them and do all. And I've used that. We had one at KEF. I used to go out experimenting, recording stuff with that. So that's sort of the idea of capturing both the amplitude and velocity of the sound at any particular point. But it's still accessing the sound from a point. But you can separate out different sounds. So if you can then put that back through a multi-channel replay system, can you fool the ear into thinking you're at the event? And how many directions and reproducing sources do you need to do that? Do you literally surround yourself with speakers? At KEF, we were doing a very interesting research project combined with Bang & Olufsen and the Technical University in Copenhagen, where in an anechoic chamber, a huge anechoic chamber, we set up an array of 30 loudspeakers all the way around us at something like 3-meter radius. And then we built a 32-channel discrete DSP engine, and we could simulate sounds coming from any direction. So we could simulate what are the virtual sources of a speaker in a room. If you've got a speaker here and a wall, it's like no wall, but with a digital speaker equidistant.
Okay, right.
So now you can calculate all those images, put them through all these speakers, and now in an anechoic chamber, it sounds like you're in a room. And so we could investigate the importance of reflections and the importance of speaker directivity. And so I built every one of those speakers. It was my albatross at the time, because they're all individually equalized, they're all concentric 5-inch drivers. Before we even put Uni-Q into production, I was building these.
So what year is that?
Probably mid to late 80s.
Okay.
So that was to investigate room acoustics. And then Floyd Toole, because we knew him, he was fascinated with that, and then went off and started doing sort of those kind of experiments at the NRC. So you could take that idea and then say, instead of mimicking rooms, can we mimic a captured sound field?
Right.
And I know there are universities working on those kind of things, because I've talked to some of them. So is that the future? Let's not just think about what is the future of the technology to convert electrical signals into acoustic signals, i.e. the speaker, but go beyond that into what is the technology to recreate a performance in an environment to replay in another environment.
Right. Of course, you'd have to eliminate the room.
Yes.
Which you sort of do right now with no fancy technology, just as near field. You're getting closer and closer
Certainly
to eliminating the room.
near field, you can do a lot more.
So it's not like you have to wait until 2050 to try that. But
you can also, there's a technique for eliminating room modes.
Oh, really? Okay.
Where, imagine I put a pair of speakers in a room. Then at the back, if the back was open, the sound field would just keep on progressing, and you could never have a standing wave.
Right.
You can put an array of speakers, and depending on how high in frequency you want to go, determines how many of these speakers you need. It's typically 4. You put 4 speakers at the back of the room. You take the signal that you fed to the main speakers.
Right. I get it. I see where you're going.
You delay it, invert it, attenuate it. Now it absorbs that sound
like
coming
noise
down
cancelling
here. It's a
headphones.
kind of a noise cancelling,
Right.
and it never returns to you.
Okay.
So if
and
you,
it actually works?
oh, it works very well.
Oh, good.
But you've got even more speakers in the room.
Yeah, that's what everybody wants.
But ultimately, if you've got enough speakers like this array that I was talking about, that array can both be the source of the recorded sound and the spatial array that eliminates all your room reflections the anti-room.
Yeah.
So, but it needs, all these techniques now need a technique to capture fully the spatial sound from, let's say, the orchestra in the hall. And then you need enough speakers to replay that and eliminate the room. So we know that the simplest way of fooling yourself to being there is binaural.
Right.
You have a dummy head, preferably with your own ears,
Right.
molds in it,
Right.
and you listen back on headphones. The downside is you listen by moving.
Well, there's head tracking. You can do that. part.
Right, so you have to add head tracking.
Right.
But head tracking solves the replay part of it. It didn't solve that you were moving your head in the recording, which is part of your acuity to spatial cues. It has to happen in the recording as well as the playback,
does?
because you've eliminated part of it,
Oh.
right?
Okay.
So how do you do that? Do you have some random? Should you have someone just messing about with the dummy head while
Yeah.
you're doing
Yeah,
the
yeah.
recording
Yeah,
and link that to the head tracking on replay?
Yeah.
I want to patent that.
This is
That's my
scary.
idea. That's
what
my
I'm
idea.
saying.
Don't steal
Look at
my
that.
idea.
Copyright Andrew Jones 2019. Yeah. Got it.
So then if we say that's the perfect, but how do you expand that to multiple listeners, blah, blah. The idea of taking a dummy head recording but playing back on speakers and eliminating the crosstalk so you can do it. There's people working on that in this very city.
Right. Right.
So there's that aspect of it to reduce the number of speakers you need and eliminate the room. If you're going to play it back on headphones, let's get back to the idea of, can you eliminate mechanical devices? Could you safely do some other kind of transducer mechanism like we've been talking about, ionic or laser type thing stuck in your ears?
Oh, perfect.
I won't be the dummy
You won't be
for
the dummy head
testing
for
that out.
yeah.
Yeah. But depending on how far in the future we're talking about, I know people who were working on implantable earphones, for people with deafness. They were working on these tiny little things and winding their own little coils, and you implant them into wherever in the ear to bypass even the ear canal part of things. Could you directly excite the eardrum?
Right.
Using an electrostatic probe.
Yikes.
Right? And then beyond that, sufficiently far in the future, are we talking about direct stimulation of the neural pathways
Well,
to
that's
the
where
brain?
it's all headed, right? I mean, pardon the pun, but it's all headed to your head. And I think eliminating all the mechanical parts like your ears would be the ultimate, because then you wouldn't have to worry about the room anymore. That makes the most sense. Actually,
Yes.
This reminds me, there was a guy at AES a few years ago, and he was doing a talk on the recordings of, I think it was 2050, and he talked about that he didn't see any future for headphones. He said it was all headphones, and that it would all be, that you could move your head and head tracking, and you would just be there present at the session.
I mean, we're talking about virtual reality with sound, aren't we?
Yeah.
So we know pretty well how to do that on the replay side and obviously the recording side with dummy head microphones and dummy head headphones. Person to person. But since most recordings aren't capturing a real event,
Exactly.
what do we do beyond that? If we're creating something in a studio to be heard,
Right.
do we actually play it back over the speakers that the recording engineer or the producer wanted to mix on, put a dummy head at the engineer's chair, record it that way to play back to the listener?
I like this.
Right?
You're going so far beyond what I was, thinking this was going to be.
I would say I think on my feet, but I'm actually sat down.
Yeah, you're thinking well on your ass. Yeah, it's good.
Because in that instance, what represents what that recording
Yeah,
is?
you're talking about like not a classical concert,
Not a
but
classical concert.
a normal multi-channel recording.
Yeah,
studio
a
recording.
synthesized musical event.
Right.
The judge of whether that synthesized event is what is wanted
Right.
is the producer or the engineer.
Or the artist.
Or the artist. How did they experience it? By listening in that studio to a pair of speakers.
The circle is complete.
Yes.
There you go. You've closed the loop. That's it. You can find that fantasy. You can hear what the band, producer, artist, whatever wanted. That's it.
Yeah,
I think you can rest now.
I can. Yes.
I think you should have something. Take a break. Thank you, Andrew.
My pleasure.
My guest, Andrew Jones. My name is Steve Guttenberg. Thank you guys for watching. This is the Audiophiliac Daily Show from Brooklyn. See you later.